there worldwide. Hey there YouTube. Hey there Facebook. Hello and welcome. You have stumbled right into Kari's Corner yet again. I am so happy that you are here. We were off last week. Even Kari needs a break every now and again to come up with some fun and exciting new content. But I am so happy that you're here. So thrilled to have you on the show today. We have a great show lined up for you today. If you're new, if you're coming and watching for the first time, as you just let you know, drop your name in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from. As always, we will be answering questions live on the show. So if you drop a question in the chat, I will see it. I will respond to it. If you are watching the show and it's not live, we do go back and check. And if you have questions, please make sure you send us those questions. You're always welcome to email me as well if you have any questions about what's been on the show, or if you have suggestions about what you would like to see on the show. I'm always open to those things. So if you're viewing and you're watching, let us know in the chat where you're watching from. Always excited, always happy for you to be here. I do want to say one thing real quick, and that is just that at worldwide and across the U.S., across the globe, our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers are with the people in Hawaii right now. For those of you who aren't aware, Hawaii definitely has had a wildfire disaster. And just like everywhere else in the world, they have a shortage of nurses, a shortage of healthcare workers. I know Hawaii is actually a lot closer to those of you who are in the Asia Pacific zone watching. But currently, I think the death toll was 111. I think that's what I read this morning. And that they're still discovering bodies, still finding people. So just if you're thinking about it today, please send up, good thoughts, good prayers, vibes, whatever it is that you believe in. Just send a positive thought to those people in Hawaii. And we at Worldwide are definitely doing that, thinking of those of you and praying for you if you have family over there who are impacted by that as well. So I did just want to say that today. If you have viewers there, or just that our hearts are with Hawaii right now for sure. So not speaking of Hawaii, but speaking of other things, speaking of, the Asia and the Pacific area, make sure you are following us on TikTok, because Tracy and I filmed some fun TikTok videos about Mr. Ron Hoppy and I's trip over to Southeast Asia coming up here in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, I'll be departing, headed to South Korea, headed to the Philippines. I'm so excited. If you're in Seoul, South Korea, or you're near Seoul, South Korea, I will be conducting 2 live sessions, like in-person sessions on choosing the right English exam for you. And I'm going to give you some English tips and tricks and all of those fun things. But if you would like to attend one of those live sessions, and this is in Seoul, South Korea on Monday, September 4th, seating is limited. So make sure you sign up for that. So all the things for you guys to do today, right? Sign up for TikTok. Sign up if you're going to be in the Seoul, South Korea area on Monday, September 4th to attend one of my live sessions from 9 to noon or from 1 to 4. Super excited to head to multiple locations in the Philippines and South Korea. And I'm just so excited. So speaking of being excited, that's going to allow me to segue and transition right on into our guest today. We do have a special guest today. We have Jack Waas from the OET. He is going to talk to us. We've had Jack on before. He's fantastic and super knowledgeable about all things OET. And he's put together a presentation for the OET. For those of you who don't know, the OET is the only English language exam that is healthcare oriented. It is designed specifically for healthcare workers. So a super, super option. There is also a really strong correlation between success rates of our nurses in the United States and their abilities to speak English in the workplace because they prepared for the OET. So lots and lots and lots of great things about the OET. And Jack is on here today to talk to us about all those things. Hello in Saudi Arabia. I'm so happy you're tuning in. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Jack on.
Hello.
Hey, Jack. How are you today?
Doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I was telling Jack and Tracy earlier, I have no air conditioning in my house. So if you guys start to see me like perspire or sweat, just know I'm okay. I'm not sick. I'm just struggling, and it's okay. Jack, where are you coming in from? Where are you?
I'm based in Chicago.
Very cool. But the OET is actually based out of where?
So the OET, the headquarters for OET are in Melbourne, Australia. So yeah, the test was originally designed as kind of a collaboration between Cambridge University and a small university in Melbourne, which is why the headquarters are based there.
Have you been able to go like to Melbourne?
Not yet. Hopefully next year I'll get to go. Yeah, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I would love to make it out there.
If you get to bring a travel companion, like I
Yes.
volunteer as tribute. Oh my God, I would love to go to Melbourne, Australia, and
Yes,
see
likewise.
Australia. That's just super, super cool. Love it. I'm almost kind of jealous that I'm going to be in the Philippines, like so close to Australia, and I'm like, I can't get down there. Very, very cool. I love the Australian accent. All of it. I just think it's fascinating. So let's go ahead and jump into Jack has created a presentation for us. And he's going to walk us through all things wonderful about the OET. So Jack, I'm going to let you take it away.
Great, thank you, Kari. So as Kari mentioned, my name is Jack Waas. I'm the U.S. Education Specialist for OET. So yeah, just kind of work with candidates and different agencies that they're looking to instruct and prepare people for the OET exam. So I'm happy to talk about OET today for you. So kind of in this presentation, we're going to go over some of the benefits of OET, why a healthcare specific test is important, and kind of some of the rationale behind designing OET. And then also we're going to talk about the 4 different sections of the test, and then cover some tips that you can use when preparing and taking OET. Next slide. So first of all, as I mentioned, OET is the only English language test designed specifically for healthcare professionals. So what that means is that it was developed in consultation with subject matter experts, meaning that the content is relevant and specific to a healthcare context, and is reviewed for relevance by licensed healthcare professionals in each country where the test operates. So for example, the nursing version of OET is reviewed by a registered nurse who also helps to write items for the test on an ongoing basis and just make sure that it's relevant for the US context. Also, the test materials replicate the language skills required to deliver patient safety and quality care, and candidates learn the type of language they'll need at work. So all this to say that prepping for and taking OET will help you develop skills you will need on the job. So what do I mean when I say a healthcare specific test, and how is that kind of different from other English language exams on the market? So the first thing that I would like to use here to kind of illustrate that, the first example is the writing portion of OET. So in a general or more academic English test, you might be asked to write an essay on a general topic, whereas for OET, you'll be writing a healthcare letter, usually a referral letter or a discharge summary based on case notes. Right, so again, you're being assessed on your writing abilities in English, but in a more applicable and familiar scenario. The second example here would be the speaking portion. So again, in a general or academic English test, you might be asked to participate as a candidate in a structured interview on a general topic, whereas with OET, you'll be asked to take the role of a healthcare professional in a role play with a patient, which is kind of the type of conversation that you'd be having on a daily basis with patients as a healthcare professional. So again, something very familiar to you.
That's probably one of my favorite things about the OET is your writing portion and your speaking portion. I just think that's so unique to nurses, and it's so helpful because you're already learning English language to prepare yourself for the workplace, right? So you're going to be learning English language specific to your workplace and not English language that you would use in a college classroom. So
absolutely,
2 very different forms of preparation. And I feel like this one is going to benefit you in the workplace heavily, which is absolutely awesome.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, and to kind of, to piggyback on what you're saying there, talking a little bit more about the speaking section there is this emphasis on clinical communication as well, right? This is another thing that kind of differentiates it from other general English tests. And here are some examples of what candidates might be asked to do to kind of demonstrate that clinical communication. Elicit and deal with sensitive topics, translate specialist register into lay language, so taking that more complex medical terminology and jargon and relaying that to a patient in a way that they would understand. Reassure someone who is anxious and really manage the power relationship between the interlocutor and the candidates. I mean, just to mention here, the speaking section is scored 60% on English language proficiency, and then there's 40% on these healthcare clinical communication skills. So it really is a really important component of the speaking section.
That's awesome.
Moving on to some of the benefits of a healthcare specific test, right? So OET really targets skills required in healthcare workplace, such as empathy, expeditious reading, and recording details accurately. It promotes patient-centered approach, using skills such as questioning techniques and active listening. It prepares test takers for cultural differences, such as dealing with sensitive topics and understanding and using inclusive language. And it really helps to ensure that successful test takers are ready for the demands of an English-speaking workplace.
Yeah, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago that CGFNS actually conducted a survey that from doctors and physicians who are in the United States, and one of the biggest complaints, if you will, is that nurses are just not prepared to speak English in the workplace. They're prepared to converse with you, but not in a healthcare setting. So I always like to tell people, yes, the OET is not as widely accepted in the US as other exams are, but I do like to tell nurses, even if you are, you've taken your whatever exam and you're preparing to come to the United States, I guide them to the OET to prepare them for, even if you're not going to take the OET, take advantage of OET preparation to prepare you for the workplace. Because you guys have some fantastic preparation materials.
Yeah, no, I think that's it definitely helps to address that need, and I feel like that is a really big thing that's brought to our attention from people in the healthcare field as well. All right, so moving on to talk a little bit about the rationale behind creating OET, an English language test that's specific for healthcare professionals. So here are some of the issues in healthcare that OET was designed to address. The first one being a shortage of skilled healthcare professionals in English language countries, English-speaking countries rather, and Kari was kind of addressing that shortage earlier on, right? This is something that we're facing on a daily basis. Second, the pressure being put on healthcare systems by aging populations. Increased consumer expectations and a focus on patient-centered care, and the high cost of communication errors in healthcare, right? As nurses, you know how damaging these communication errors can be in a healthcare context. So when looking at all these points, you can see how the need for trained healthcare professionals in an English-speaking context, and start to understand how OET helps to prepare healthcare professionals to meet these needs in the market. All right, so moving on to what's in the test. So I'm going to walk you guys through the different sections of OET, and then also give you some tips that you can use to prepare for the different subsections as well.
This is the good stuff.
Yes. So let's get started with the listening subtest. So the listening test is made up of 3 parts and takes approximately 40 minutes. So part A are 2 separate consultations between a healthcare professional and a patient. And this is something that healthcare professionals are very comfortable with. No need to change any information heard in the audio. Instead, you're going to write exactly what you hear to complete the gaps in the notes. And there are 2 audios for this part and 12 questions for each of those audios. You can actually see an example here on the slide. That's an example from the part A section. So you can kind of see the case notes and the gaps where the candidate would have to fill in that missing information. Part B are 6 short dialogues or monologues in a workplace setting. So these are types of conversations healthcare professionals might have with a colleague, such as a handover of a patient, a team briefing, feedback to a healthcare professional from a mentor, etc. And there's one multiple choice question for each of the audios. And then part C are 2 long presentations or interviews with healthcare professionals. And these are typical of professional development content that healthcare professionals listen to. Presenters describe the work they do in their healthcare field, for example, or developments in the treatment of a condition. And again, there are 2 audios for this portion and 6 questions for each of the audios in this part.
So lots of like fill in the blank, it looks like, from the sample.
Yes, absolutely, especially for part A. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to some of the tips for the listening section. The first one is to know the test format, right? Know what to expect. How do you record answers for each part of the test? And you can practice this by using the official sample tests available from the OET website. I'll talk a little bit more about preparation moving on in this presentation, but yes, you can find information about those sample tests on our website. The second tip would be to move forward even if you miss a question, right? If you don't understand a part of the audio, keep going so you don't miss out on any other questions. And then if you have any time at the end, you can come back and revisit those questions that you might have missed. The third tip, in part A, use the reading time and text. So 60 seconds are given before each audio plays. So you use that time to get a sense of the patient scenario and start to anticipate the types of questions you might hear using the words around the gap to show if the question might be a symptom, a body part, the patient's occupation, etc. So just use the information around the blank to try to anticipate what you might be listening for as a candidate. And lastly, in parts B and C, focus on meaning, not the words, right? So parts B and C are checking your understanding of the outcome of a conversation or the opinion or attitude of the speaker. So you need to avoid focusing in on individual words repeated in both the questions and the audio, and instead focus on the speaker's intended meaning for those 2 parts.
Yeah, I always stress knowing the test format is so important. And that's true no matter which test you're going to take. But understanding and preparing yourself for, what's it going to look like that's improved so many people's scores just by know what you're getting into before you get into it, right?
Absolutely.
So knowing that test format is super important. It's one of the best tips, I think.
Yes, it's a great way to prepare. So moving on to the reading portion, it is also made up of 3 different parts and takes 60 minutes. Part A is completed as 15 minutes, and it's designed to replicate the workplace where you don't always have the luxury of time to consider information or check the meaning of words. So you have to use your skimming and scanning skills for this part to quickly find information from one of 4 texts and copy this as your answer. And this part A, has 20 questions across the 4 texts. Part B are 6 short workplace extracts. And these short texts are typical of those sent as an email or memo in a workplace setting or found in your staff room notice board. So something like policy updates, machine operating instructions, or something of that nature. And there's one multiple choice question for each of the 6 texts. You can see an example excerpt for part B on the slide there. You can see the little text and the question to go along with it. And part C are 2 long presentation passages, which, similar to the listening part C, these are typical of professional development content of general interest to all healthcare professionals.
Yeah, I would have to say that the reading portion of the OET, to me, to a non-nurse, I would be just completely lost. I would not do well. However, if you're a nurse, like, these are things and skills that you already have. You already do these things. It's just, preparing to do them in English as opposed to, the language you're currently using in your workplace. And some of you, I know a lot of you already use English in your workplace. You may not speak it outside of your workplace, but you do use it in your workplace. So it does make preparation for that part much easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, we sometimes hear, evidence from candidates that, sometimes in the past they might have tried to take another English test a couple of times, and because it's a little bit less relevant and more general, they might have struggled a little bit more. But then when taking OET, they find that the preparation seems to be a little bit easier and are more engaged in the preparation process for sure.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the reading tips here. So the first one, do part A questions in order. So the first set of matching questions in part A are designed to help you orientate yourself to the text contents. Doing them first will make it easier to find the answers to the remaining questions because you have a better idea about what each text is about and where you can find the specific information that you're looking for. Next tip, read multiple choice stems first. So this is a good multiple choice strategy in general across any test, is to read the question or the stem part first and try to find the answer in the text yourself before you check the possible answer options that are available to you, right? And this will help to avoid you being distracted by all the options appearing plausible. So, right, read the question first, look in the text for the answer, and then look at the options available to you. Next tip here is to build stamina and flexibility. So for all parts of the test, it's a good idea to train a few times a week by doing 1 hour of reading, 40 minutes of listening, and 45 minutes of writing, and preferably try to do all 3 of those things back to back at least once a week to really build up that stamina. High levels of concentration are needed to take OET, and you wouldn't want this to be the reason that you don't get the score that you want because you get fatigued or you get tired on your test day. So really make sure that you invest time in preparing and building up that stamina. And lastly, practice first without a timer. Don't overcomplicate things when you start prep. Give your brain space to work out how the test works and get familiar with all the types of questions. And then you can kind of start timing yourself based on the time allotted in the different sections.
I love that you talk about building like stamina and flexibility because and like the little emoji guy you have is like somebody running on a treadmill because we always think about ourselves as, okay, you have to physically train yourself if you're going to run a marathon, right? You're not just going to jump out there and run an extended period of time. I would personally die. But we don't think about training our brains to focus for that long. And it's really important for nurses because, I mean, think about what you guys do. You go from patient to patient to patient, maybe spending maximum 15 minutes with a patient. So your brain has kind of been trained to focus on one thing for 15 minutes. That's the longest time it can focus, unless you like binge some Netflix stuff. So you have to train your brain to focus for those extended periods of time, or else you're going to get it to that test and your brain's not going to be ready for it. Like as much as you want to tell your brain you have to focus, if you haven't prepared your brain to do it, it ain't going to do it.
Yeah, it really is a skill that you have to develop over time.
100%.
Moving on to the writing section. So the first thing to note here is that both the listening and the reading sections are general healthcare topics that are the same across all the different versions of OET, right? These are general healthcare topics, whereas the writing and speaking section are something even more familiar. These are profession specific. So for example, nurses taking the OET, the nursing version of OET, will be presented with a nursing specific writing and speaking task, right? Something even more specific to them. So for the writing task, it is a, it's a task that's based on a set of clinical case notes. So typically it comes in the form of a referral letter. It could also be a discharge summary, for example. But yeah, typically a referral letter or a discharge summary. And candidates are given time to read a patient's case history. And at the end of the case notes is the writing task, which contains details of who you need to write the letter to and why. And as you can see here, you're given 5 minutes to kind of familiarize yourself with the case history and look at the task. And then there's 40 minutes to write the letter afterwards. So you have time to determine who to write the letter to and kind of how to format it. And everything you need to include in the letter is given to you in the case notes. Candidates need to decide which information the reader needs to continue care and how to organize the letter to be as clear as possible for the reader.
Absolutely. Clear and concise.
Yes, that's the key. So moving on to the writing tips here. The first one is to practice your test type, right? So we were talking earlier about practicing and knowing how to record your answers for the test. This becomes even more important when you're thinking about the writing portion. because we do have a paper-based and a computer-based test available, right? So make sure that you're preparing in the way that you'll be actually taking the test on the test day, right? If you're taking the paper-based test, practice handwriting your letter. If you're doing the computer-based test, you can practice typing your letter. So, you know, setting yourself up for success on your test day. The second tip here would be to practice all letter types. So for nurses, you'll be asked to write it's three letter types. There's the referral letter, the discharge, or a transfer letter. So any three of those letter types you could be asked to write. Regardless of the letter type, your approach for all is the same. What information does the reader need to know, and how can this be most clearly communicated to the reader? Third tip here is to throw away your templates. To score well, your letter needs to be personalized to this specific patient and their individual needs. So don't be tempted to learn a template or format by heart. Instead, focus on communicating the specific information relevant to the reader. And lastly, keep your reader in mind. This isn't a letter about what you find relevant or interesting as a candidate, right? It's a letter telling the reader the information that will be relevant for them. So this will help you decide which information to include or omit based on the specifics of the case notes and instructions provided after, right? So one thing to keep in mind is that maybe not everything in the case notes is relevant for the letter, right? So you might have some superfluous information in there that's good for you to know as a medical professional, but maybe not something that is pertinent to the specific tasks of the letter. So just try to keep that in mind when drafting the letter.
Very good. Yeah, I love the throw away your templates, because if you have been preparing for another, I think we see templates most often with people who have prepared for a different test.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, IELTS, TOEFL, PTE, where templates are okay to use on there. I hate using templates, but that's me. That's how I roll. But that's not going to work for this test. So if you've been preparing for a different test and you think you can just use the same types of things for the OET, absolutely not. It just doesn't sound right.
Agreed.
It doesn't make sense. So absolutely get rid of those templates. I just think you should get rid of all of them.
So to do a little bit more of a deep dive into the writing test, this is actually a sample from one of the sample tests on our website. This is an example of what some of the case notes might look like. So you can see the first part of the case notes tells candidates their role in the writing task as the writer, followed by the patient details such as name, residence, admission and discharge date, and the diagnosis. And this slide only shows some of the information included in the case notes, right? It's actually kind of a 2-page document, so this is just a little bit of a snippet of the case notes. There's a lot more information provided, but this just gives you an example of what type of information you would see in the writing task. And you can find more examples and sample tests with the full case notes available on our website as well, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And then the second part of the writing prompt, which you would see is after the case notes, you see the writing task. So again, this is just a sample of a writing task. After closely reading the notes, the next step in the writing section is to familiarize yourself with the writing task. This provides information on the type of letter you'll be writing. So in this case, you can see in the notes it says a discharge letter, so you know the letter type right there. And make sure to read the instructions closely and pay attention to any relevant details, right? It even gives you some notes here on the slide. Do not use note form, use letter format. So make sure that you're reading all those bullets and all the tips given to you so you can really get the best score as possible by following these instructions.
Absolutely. And keeping to that word length too. Very, very, very specific. I know that can impact your score if you go over or if you don't write enough. So make sure you pay attention to the words. Does the OET have like a word counter on there so it tells you how many you've written?
Yes, on the computer-based version, that's one of the added benefits of the computer-based version is having that word count.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, so moving on to the last section here, which is the speaking section. So the first thing to note here is you can see the total time at the top. It says 20 minutes or 30 minutes for the online speaking test. So the difference here is that for the paper-based test, you're doing the speaking section at the venue. The interlocutor will be located at the venue, and you'll be doing the role play, the speaking section there. For the computer-based test, you're doing the listening, speaking, and writing section at the venue, and then the listening, reading, and writing, and the speaking test is actually conducted later the same day via Zoom in the candidate's home. So that's the one piece that you would be doing outside of the venue. And that's why we estimate a little bit longer for the computer-based test. It takes around 30 minutes because they're doing an ID and environment check before you start the listening section, just to ensure that the security and the authenticity of the exam, to make sure everything is being recorded accurately and that there's no malpractice or anything at play here, ensuring the authenticity and security of the exam. These role plays are designed to give candidates the opportunity to demonstrate a range of English and the ability to speak to patients and their family on a variety of common healthcare issues, where you might be using skills such as explaining, reassuring, advising, persuading, responding. So any of these types of, skills or abilities you might have to use in the speaking section. As you can see here, of course, the candidate takes the role of the nurse and the healthcare professional, and the interlocutor takes the role of the patient. Now, the interlocutor is only there to facilitate the role play, right? They have no part in the assessment. So you don't have to be, worried or nervous in interacting with them. They're not the ones evaluating you. They're just there to help you in this role play. And both the candidate and interlocutor have a role card with information about the purpose of the conversation and the tasks or the topics that they have to cover. And you're given 3 minutes to prepare for each role play, and then each role play lasts around 5 minutes.
That's part of another reason that I really like the OET versus IELTS, I think, is the only other big test that still does an in-person speaking. But because so many people complain about their experience at the IELTS, because the person who's scoring you is your evaluator, and they can be very monotone. They can have like a very straight face. There's no expression. But the person, like you said, the person who you're talking to is not evaluating you. That's not the person who's scoring you, right?
Yeah.
But they're into it. They're role playing something for you. They have to speak with some emotion and respond to you like kind of like a patient would. So way easier to talk to somebody when they're engaged with you versus judging you on the spot. So I love that the OET, I don't feel like a lot of people know that about the OET, that in the role play, that's not actually the person who's going to be, judging how you do.
Exactly. Yeah, the stakes are much lower when interacting with a person, for sure.
Yes.
So moving on to the speaking tips here. The first one is use the 3 minutes prep time wisely. So at the beginning of, before you're starting each role play, as I mentioned, you have those 3 minutes of prep time. So think about how you want to start the conversation. Consider writing it down so you don't forget by the time you look through all the tasks on the role card and you really know how you want to begin. Think about what you will need to explain to the patient and how you can do this without technical terms that they might not know, right? So we talked about earlier, the speaking section asked you to kind of translate some of that more technical and technical knowledge to a kind of a more layperson or just a general English. So make sure that you're really using that when speaking with the patient, with the interlocutor. The second tip is to get feedback on your speaking. So invest in feedback from a trained teacher. It's very hard for people to objectively evaluate their own speaking, right? It's not writing or listening, those skills that are a little bit easier to maybe evaluate, but it's really hard to evaluate your own speaking. So make sure that you're reaching out to a trained professional. Obviously, you can reach out to Kari for recommendations, and then on our OET website, of course, we have some other options of preparation and tutors that can help you with that evaluation. Next thing would be to give the patient time to respond, right? So these role plays are meant to be a real conversation between the healthcare professional and the patient. Make sure that you are not dominating the conversation, but instead engaging the interlocutor and replying based on the information that they provide you, right? So this is maybe one of the cultural differences that some people might encounter when preparing for OET, right? In an English-speaking workplace and in a healthcare workplace, for the most part, the nurse and the patient are having a real exchange, right? You're not being talked at. You have to really listen to the information and be able to have a real conversation with the patient. So you have to kind of replicate that same thing in this role play. And lastly, don't focus too much on finishing the tasks. It's more important that you have a natural conversation that focuses on the patient rather than rushing through all the tasks in 5 minutes. You don't have to complete every task to be able to get a high score. It's more important to be thorough when speaking about the tasks and make sure to include the interlocutor in the conversation, right? So I've gotten this question before. Do I have to complete all the speaking tasks to kind of pass the speaking section? That's not the case. Obviously, try to complete as many as you can, but focus more on being thorough and on really having an authentic and organic conversation with the interlocutor.
Absolutely.
So again, doing a little bit of deep dive into writing here. This is a sample roll card. So this is an example of something that's given to the candidates during the OET speaking subtest. So the interlocutor would get obviously their own version of this roll card, which tells them what they need to do during this conversation. This is for the candidate specifically. So the first thing you note here is the setting, right? In this case, it says clinic, which gives you a clue about the conversation. Is it a routine visit? Is it an emergency health issue? Is the patient at home or visiting a clinic or at the hospital? It kind of tells you where the conversation is taking place. You don't necessarily need to mention anything about the setting during the role play, but it does give you some understanding of where the situation of the role play is taking place and helps you prepare for the type of conversation that you're going to be having. Next thing to notice is the background information. So, where it says nurse, it says you are a patient of 51 years, etc. This gives you relevant background details about the patient's age, the reason for the healthcare visit, and whether this is the first visit or it's part of a prior relationship of ongoing visits. The background information also makes it clear if you are speaking to the patient directly or a relative of the patient. So for example, if the patient is a child, you might be interacting with the patient's parent rather than with the patient directly. And lastly, the tasks give you instructions about what to say, right? We kind of talked about these tasks already. The verbs tell you the function of your communication, right? So you can see confirm, resist, emphasize. What are the things that you need to do? These action verbs tell you that. Whereas the information in parentheses provide examples that you can use, right? So for example, it says give information about squamous cell carcinoma. I do not know what that is. It tells you that I am not a nurse here. And then it says type of skin cancer caused by sun exposure. So it gives you some more details about the things that you need to explain. So yeah, just make sure to pay attention to those action verbs and then also the information in parentheses there.
Squamous cell sarcoma.
There we go. Squamous cell sarcoma.
I only know because I've had it removed.
Okay, there you go.
That's like one thing. I was like, I know what that is. Dermatology, I can totally do.
There you go. All right, so now that we've talked about the different sections of OET, let's go into how candidates typically prepare for the test. So the first step for candidates looking for preparation information is the Learn section of the OET website, and that is oet.com/learn. And on this preparation information page within the Learn website, there's a wide range of materials across multiple study formats that cover the 4 sections of OET, as well as hours worth of free resources available for you as a candidate. A great resource.
Oh yeah, I love URL's website does a phenomenal job as far as offering great preparation material.
Absolutely, yeah, there's a lot of stuff on there. Some of the examples of that you can actually see on this slide here. So there's sample tests, right, which is where I got the screenshots of the writing and the speaking section from. Free intro to OET course. There's a free OET study guide, and there's writing and speaking guides. There's actually some new guides that were just launched that focus on the individual skills. And I believe they're only about $25 or $30 each. So it's a relatively low cost, specifically if you are struggling on a specific skill, right? Is it writing? Is it speaking? Something that you really want to focus on? You can get those resources from the website. And as I mentioned, there's a combination of free and paid resources. So depending on your budget for preparation, we have a variety of both free and paid resources. This is an example of what the free study guide looks like. So here are resources and tips that cover the 4 sections of the test. And you can also find practice materials and sample tests within the study guide. So yeah, this is one of the more popular free resources that we have available is this OET study guide.
Oh, I have this one downloaded.
Next thing I want to talk about is the OET Pulse. So this is a short exam to help candidates determine their current level of English and also kind of their current level of preparedness to take OET. How ready or prepared are you currently to take OET, or do you need some additional preparation before you can do that?
This is a fantastic exam too. I know we did a giveaway a few months ago, and got some great feedback from candidates who they were able to take. I think the OET Pulse is like $35, $35
yeah.
US. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it might even be less because it's 30 Australian dollars. So I think it's even less. It might even be 20 something in USD. Yeah, it's a very, very cost effective. Yeah.
Yeah, it's only like a 30-minute test too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's a 30-minute test. You can kind of take it anytime, anywhere. The other cool thing about it is that it's adaptive. So based on how you're responding, it gives you, answers that help to really pinpoint your exact level. It's very, very accurate. Cost effective, as we said, 30 Australian dollars. And then the last thing is that it really provides you with immediate results in your dashboard and feedback, which is really helpful on how to improve and prepare for OET.
I think too, if you're going to a state that unfortunately does not accept the OET, I think the OET Pulse, and I've encouraged candidates to research the OET Pulse just to kind of get a general idea of where you are, what you need to work on. Keeping in mind the OET is a healthcare oriented test, and it's the only one that is that way. But it does kind of give you a nice kind of generalized overview of your English speaking skills in the workplace.
Absolutely. And then the last thing I wanted to mention here is just kind of overview of kind of some of the top reasons why you should choose OET. So the first one is that preparing for OET is preparing for a new career in an English-speaking workplace. Right? We talked extensively about that already, how relevant, how engaging, and how these clinical communication skills really do set you up for success. OET really gives you that confidence that you need to be able to communicate with patients and colleagues from day one. Candidates have reported to us that they are more motivated to study for OET because the topics and questions are relevant and interesting to them. Also, we have the option of the computer-based test and the paper-based test. And so only one visit to the venue is required for both of those options. As I mentioned before, for the computer-based test, the speaking one is done later at the candidate's home, whereas for the paper-based, you're doing all 4 sections at the venue. We now also have over 1,000 venues in over 90 countries. We have a growing network of test venues. And as Kari mentioned, we are constantly working on increasing our acceptance with the state nursing boards. So there's actually a kind of nursing board conference in Chicago this week. So some of my other colleagues are in town in my hometown here in Chicago. So we've been speaking with some of the nursing boards. We're constantly trying to grow our acceptance across the different states. And please do check out our website. We have a who accepts or who recognizes OET section, which gives you the current status of where OET is accepted. And we're constantly working to grow those numbers and to ensure that it's more and more accepted across the states here in the US.
Absolutely. And with that being said, I do want to kind of, it's been announced on social media, but at Worldwide, we have started placing nurses in the United Kingdom and working with United Kingdom recruitment and all that kind of stuff. And the OET is one of 2 tests that's accepted in the United Kingdom. So if you are interested, if you're a nurse out there and you're interested in heading to the United Kingdom, you can either take the OET or the IELTS. It makes my job easy. But you can take the OET or the IELTS. And I love that the United Kingdom is 100% on board with the OET. So if, like I said, Worldwide is now placing nurses across the UK. And that will increase the number of applicants we have preparing for the OET. I will be launching an OET preparation course in September. That is like specific to training you and getting you ready for the OET. So I'll be using a lot of those free resources you have. And, the OET, actually, one thing that they do is they actually have a course that you can take to become a certified OET instructor or teacher. And I'm happy and proud to say I completed that course. It's very detailed. It's very rigorous. I wish the other tests would get on board with that, because I feel very prepared to help people with the OET. Whereas, and they did it all kind of for me. Whereas with the other tests, I've had to go and dig and do my own research. But the OET they take care of the people who are taking their test, and they take care of the people who are preparing people to take the test. So
absolutely.
Big shout out to the OET. I'm very, very thankful for all the preparation. But a big shout out to you, Jack, for this show and for this presentation. I feel like it was super beneficial. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch it to make sure I'm up to date and have all the right information as I'm designing my course. But if we have questions coming in, I know the show was a little bit longer today, but we had such great information coming in from Jack. If you guys have any questions for Jack or about the OET, you can email me and I'll make sure he gets those questions. He is always awesome when it comes to responding promptly with all of my fun questions that I throw his way. But do you have anything else that you want to add before I close us out, Jack?
Nothing for the time being. Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, if there are any questions, feel free to shoot those to Kari. Yeah, we can even do like a little blog post that answers the main questions and kind of send that to you or something like that. So happy to answer any questions that people have. And yes, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on, Jack. And we look forward to having you again soon, hopefully to talk about maybe some more specific UK based, all of that fun stuff that we're launching on our end. So looking forward to working with you guys in the OET again very soon.
Likewise.
Thanks, Jack.
Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, a big shout out to the OET, a big shout out to Jack. Gary is always out there watching. He's with the OET too. He likes to shoot me emails. So Gary, if you're watching this one, big shout out. Hey, Gary. But thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for watching. I will be launching an OET course in September. Like I said, I have an IELTS course and I have a PTE preparation course. A TOEFL course is coming this month, and then OET is next up on my docket for September. So I'm very excited to have very course-specific test preparation for all of our nurses who are preparing to come to the United States. If you're watching and you're interested in coming to the US or the UK or the Middle East, you're looking for placement in any of those areas, please consider Worldwide. We are, we're an awesome company. We're an awesome place to be. I'm here and I'm happy to be here and excited to be here and thankful for this platform of Kari's Corner to talk to you guys. But until next week, I'm going to remind you, don't face the corner, face the world with Worldwide, and I'll talk to you again.